Every thought you think sends a signal into the field, attracting experiences that match its frequency. This isn't just a motivational phrase, it's a fundamental principle of how the mind interacts with the quantum world. Most people live their lives in a loop, unaware that the thoughts they consistently think are shaping the reality they experience. They wake up in the morning and immediately recall their problems. They check their phones, remember who they are, what they've been through, and what's wrong with their lives. The moment they do this, their bodies are flooded with the same emotions as yesterday: stress, anxiety, self doubt. What they don't realize is that by reaffirming these feelings, they are not just recalling the past, they are recreating it. Thoughts are electrical charges in the brain. The moment you think a thought, neurons fire together, wiring and reinforcing the same neural pathways. If you continuously think the same thoughts, those pathways become highways, making it easier for your brain to follow the same patterns over and over again. And because thoughts create emotions, those repeated thoughts generate the same biochemical responses in your body, leading you to feel the same way you always feel. Your state of being then becomes predictable and life follows suit. The same circumstances, the same struggles, the same challenges, because the energy you emit is identical every single day. But here's what most people don't realize. The brain does not know the difference between what is real and what is imagined. If you close your eyes and fully immerse yourself in a thought, seeing it, hearing it, feeling it, your brain records it as if it were actually happening. This means that if you change your thoughts, truly embody them with feeling, your brain will begin to rewire itself to a new reality. You will literally become a new version of yourself by thought alone. And once your inner world changes, your external reality must follow. Imagine a person who has always told themselves, "I'm not good enough." Every time they think this thought, their brain strengthens the neural connections that support this belief. Their body responds by releasing stress hormones that make them feel weak, defeated, and unworthy. Over time, this becomes their identity. Their posture, tone of voice, and actions all align with this inner narrative, and as a result, their experiences reflect it. They attract relationships that confirm their feelings of unworthiness. They take jobs that undervalue them. Their life in every way mirrors the story they tell themselves. Now imagine that same person decides to change their inner dialogue. Instead of waking up and saying, "I'm not good enough," they begin their day with, "I am worthy, I am powerful, I am creating a new future." At first, it feels unnatural because their brain is used to the old program. But if they persist, if they say it repeatedly with emotion, if they visualize themselves as confident, strong, and deserving, their brain starts to adapt. New neural connections begin to form. Their body responds by releasing chemicals associated with confidence and joy, and suddenly, they start behaving differently. They stand taller, they speak with more certainty, they take risks they wouldn't have before. Their energy shifts, and because the field around them responds to energy, their external world starts to change, opportunities appear, people treat them differently. Life begins to mirror the new story they are telling themselves. This is not magic, this is science. Your thoughts act as a tuning fork, sending vibrations into the quantum field. Every thought has a frequency, and the more you focus on a thought, the stronger its signal becomes. The field responds to this signal by bringing experiences that match it. If you constantly think thoughts of lack and limitation, you will continue to attract situations that reinforce those feelings. If you begin to think in terms of abundance, worthiness, and success, you will start drawing those realities toward you. But here's the key: thought alone is not enough. A fleeting positive thought is easily drowned out by years of negative conditioning. To truly shift your reality, you must back your thoughts with emotion. Feeling is what amplifies the signal. The reason most people stay stuck is that while they might say positive affirmations, they don't truly feel them. They say, "I am confident," but internally they still feel small. They say, "I am abundant," but their body still carries the tension of financial stress. To change this, they must go beyond words. They must embody the feeling of their new reality before it arrives. Picture the version of yourself that has already achieved everything you desire. How do they think? How do they feel? How do they move through the world? Close your eyes and step into that version of yourself. Breathe the way they would breathe. Stand the way they would stand. If you do this consistently, your body will begin to believe that this future version of you is real. And once your body believes it, the universe will conspire to make it your reality. The brain is an incredible, adaptable machine. capable of change at any moment. It doesn't distinguish between what is happening in the outside world and what is vividly imagined inside the mind. This means that every thought you repeatedly think is forming and strengthening neural pathways, wiring your brain into a specific state of being. Most people, however, are unaware that they are running on autopilot, thinking the same thoughts every day, feeling the same emotions, and ultimately creating the same life. The way the brain works is simple. What you focus on repeatedly, it reinforces. If you constantly tell yourself, I'm not good enough, things never change for me, or I'm stuck, your brain accepts these statements as truth, and your body responds accordingly. When a person wakes up in the morning, the first thing they often do is recall their past. They remember their problems, their struggles, and everything that hasn't worked out for them. The moment they bring these thoughts into their awareness, they reactivate the same neural circuits that hold their past identity in place. The brain then signals the body to produce the same chemical reactions that generate emotions like stress, worry, and frustration. These emotions create a feedback loop, reinforcing the same thoughts that triggered them in the first place. In this way, a person's entire state of being is trapped in the past. Even if they say they want to change, their brain and body are still chemically addicted to the familiar feelings of their old self. But here's the good news. Just 3 days of intentional, focused thinking can begin to rewire the brain in a new direction. When you introduce new thoughts, ones that are in alignment with the future you want to create, you start sending new signals to your brain. It may feel uncomfortable at first because the brain is wired for efficiency and change requires effort. However, with conscious repetition, these new thoughts begin to fire new neural connections. The more they fire, the stronger they become, and soon they start overriding the old patterns that have been keeping you stuck. Science has shown that neurons that fire together wire together. This means that every time you think a thought and pair it with an elevated emotion, such as gratitude, excitement, or confidence, you are strengthening that new neural pathway. The first day may feel strange because your brain is still wired to your past. But by the second day, as you continue reinforcing these new thoughts, your brain starts recognizing them as familiar. By the third day, those pathways become even stronger, and your mind begins to accept them as the new normal. Imagine a person who has spent years feeling unworthy. Every day they wake up and unconsciously reaffirm this belief through their thoughts and actions. But what if, for just 3 days, they made a conscious effort to override this pattern? Instead of immediately thinking about what's wrong, they wake up and say to themselves, I am worthy. I deserve success. I am stepping into my greatest potential. At first, their brain will resist because it has been conditioned to believe the opposite. However, if they persist, if they repeat these thoughts with emotion and visualize themselves as this new version, something incredible begins to happen. The brain starts reorganizing itself. It begins weakening the old connections that supported the belief of unworthiness and strengthening the new connections that affirm confidence and self-worth. The person starts feeling different. Their posture changes, their energy shifts, and because their inner world is changing, the outer world starts reflecting it. They might notice that people treat them with more respect. Opportunities seem to appear. They feel a renewed sense of motivation. This isn't coincidence. It's the result of intentional thought and neuroplasticity in action. This process works because the subconscious mind, which controls 95% of our daily behaviors and habits, is reprogrammable. However, it doesn't change by mere logic or information alone. It changes through experience and repetition. This is why it's crucial to not just think a new thought, but to embody it, to feel it as if it were already real. When you pair a new belief with a strong emotional charge, the subconscious mind begins to accept it as truth. Most people live their lives reacting to their environment, believing that change must come from the outside first. But in reality, transformation happens from within. By consciously directing your thoughts for just 3 days, you take back control over your mind. You begin signaling your brain to create a future that is different from your past. And as those new neural connections strengthen, they become your new default. shaping the way you think, feel, and act moving forward. Most people wake up every morning and immediately step into their past. Their first thoughts are about what happened yesterday, last week, or even years ago. They remember their problems, their fears, their limitations, and their failures. The moment they do this, they unknowingly recreate the same emotional state they have been living in for years. Their body follows their mind, and before they even get out of bed, they have already reaffirmed the same identity they have been carrying. This is how the cycle continues. By unconsciously thinking and feeling the same way, they produce the same behaviors, which lead to the same results. Their reality does not change because they are operating from the same level of mind that created it. The brain is a record of the past. It stores every experience, every heartbreak, every setback, and every belief we have accepted as true. When a person continuously thinks about what has gone wrong, what hasn't worked, or what they fear, their brain fires in the same patterns that keep reinforcing those thoughts. This strengthens neural pathways associated with their past self. The more these pathways are activated, the more automatic they become, making it difficult to break free from old habits. They might say they want change, but their mind and body are still wired to the old self. Because thoughts create emotions, the body responds chemically to these repeated thoughts by producing feelings of stress, anxiety, doubt, or frustration. Over time, these emotions become so familiar that they start to feel like a part of their identity. The body becomes addicted to the chemical responses of past emotions, and this addiction makes change feel uncomfortable. Even when presented with an opportunity to do something new or step into a different future, they hesitate, not because they are incapable, but because the body craves what is familiar. Breaking the habit of being the old self starts with awareness. The moment a person realizes they are waking up and immediately identifying with their past, they have the power to change it. Instead of unconsciously repeating the same thought patterns, they can disrupt the cycle by consciously choosing new ones. It requires a deliberate effort to catch the old thoughts as they arise and replace them with thoughts that align with the future they want to create. This means thinking greater than the environment, greater than circumstances, and greater than emotions tied to past experiences. At first, this feels unnatural because the brain is wired for efficiency. It wants to follow the path of least resistance, which is why old habits feel automatic and effortless. Creating a new self, however, requires energy and focus. When a person decides to no longer identify with their past, they are stepping into the unknown, and the unknown feels uncertain. The mind will resist because it is conditioned to keep them safe in what is familiar, even if what is familiar is limiting. This is why so many people fall back into their old ways, not because change is impossible, but because they are more committed to their past than their future. To truly break free, one must become conscious of every thought, every feeling, and every behavior that aligns with the old self, and then make a conscious decision to override them. Instead of immediately thinking about their problems, they must start thinking about their possibilities. Instead of feeling doubt, they must cultivate a feeling of certainty. Instead of acting out of habit, they must act with intention. This process requires discipline because it goes against the deeply ingrained programming of the mind and body. But with repetition, the brain begins to rewire itself. The old neural connections weaken and new ones form, reinforcing the thoughts, emotions, and behaviors of the new self. The key is to practice this change daily. Each time a person catches themselves slipping into the old patterns, they must stop and redirect their focus. If they do this enough times, the new thoughts become familiar, the new emotions become natural, and the new behaviors become automatic. They are no longer living in the past, but creating their future in the present moment. And as they continue this process, the external world begins to reflect the internal change. Opportunities appear, relationships shift, and new possibilities unfold not because of luck, but because they have broken the habit of being the old self and stepped into the person they were meant to become. The way you talk to yourself must reflect the person you are becoming, not the person you were. This is the foundation of transformation. Most people live their lives reinforcing an identity based on past experiences, limitations, and failures. They think in ways that align with who they have been rather than who they want to be. This is why change feels so difficult, because their thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are all wired to their old self. Even when they desire a different life, They unconsciously sabotage themselves by continuing to think, feel, and act in alignment with their past. The mind is powerful, but it is also habitual. It will continue producing the same thoughts unless it is consciously directed toward new ones. If a person wakes up in the morning and immediately starts thinking about their struggles, their doubts, or the reasons why change hasn't happened, they are sending the same signals to their brain and body that keep them stuck. Their mind is fixated on what is missing, what is wrong, and what hasn't worked, which only reinforces their current reality. The body responds by generating emotions of frustration, stress, or fear, and those emotions then drive behaviors that keep them in the same cycle. The key to transformation is to think and act as if the future you desire is happening now. Instead of waiting for external circumstances to change before shifting internally, you must shift internally first. This means speaking to yourself in a way that aligns with your highest potential. If you want to be confident, you must speak words of confidence. If you want to be successful, you must affirm that success is already yours. If you want to attract love, you must tell yourself that you are worthy and capable of deep, meaningful connections. When you change the way you speak to yourself, you change your energy, and when you change your energy, you change what you attract. The brain does not know the difference between what is real and what is imagined. It only understands the thoughts and emotions you feed it consistently. When you repeat powerful affirmations and genuinely feel them, your brain begins wiring new neural connections that reflect those beliefs. Your subconscious mind starts accepting them as truth, and as a result, your behaviors shift naturally. You no longer hesitate, second guess yourself, or hold back because your internal dialogue no longer supports those patterns. Instead, you act with certainty, clarity, and purpose. Most people make the mistake of waiting until they see evidence of change before they allow themselves to think and feel differently. They wait until they have money before feeling abundant, wait until they have success before feeling confident, and wait until they have love before feeling worthy. But this approach keeps them stuck because they are relying on external conditions to create an internal shift. But the truth is, the internal shift must happen first. When you start speaking to yourself as if you already are the person you want to be, your brain starts believing it, your energy shifts, and the external world begins to rearrange itself to match that new state of being. This requires discipline. The old self will try to creep in with doubts and familiar patterns. You may catch yourself thinking, this isn't working, or I don't really believe this yet. That is just the old conditioning trying to maintain control. But the moment you recognize those thoughts, you have the power to override them. Instead of feeding the old self, you redirect your focus to the new self. You reinforce the thoughts, feelings, and language that align with the reality you are creating. With consistency, the new identity becomes more familiar than the old one. Every thought you think is either strengthening your past or creating your future. Every word you speak to yourself is either reinforcing an old pattern or building a new one. If you want to step into a different reality, you must start by shifting your internal dialogue. The way you speak to yourself must reflect the life you are stepping into. When you do this, you begin to embody the future now, and as you embody it, life has no choice but to meet you at the level of your new identity.